Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Higher Density Living. This is episode 232 with Alexander McKig and Jason Rigby. Lo and behold, what are we going to talk about today?
I'm not a crook.
Yeah, I'm not a crook. I'm fine. We are going to talk about UFO investigations in Cold War America. Jason, why is it that you wanted to discuss this today?
Cold War America was interesting. I can remember my parents. I mean, I was born in 73, so that was still
Cold War
happening.
didn't end until 91. So
Yeah. But I can remember my parents talking about, not UFOs per se, but talking about the Cold War in the sense of the Cuban crisis, what was going on. You know, Russia was about to launch missiles on us.
Yeah.
You know, we had like shelters. People forget about this. This was like a huge deal. They were practicing in schools, you know, to like get under your desk, and people were building bomb shelters. You know, this was like the Soviet era threat. And that's why I listened to a whole podcast that was so beautiful and so cool about how shocked people were and this gives me, and I want to talk, we'll get into this, but this makes me positive for humanity.
Why is this?
The Berlin Wall. You know, I mean, Putin was an agent in Berlin at the time.
At the time
so
when
he hated
Gorbachev
it all
had the
that
wall
way.
up, sure.
Yeah. But Gorbachev was not even, when the Berlin Wall fell, he didn't even know about it till he woke up in the morning. So it fell because people decided to go out to the wall and start disassembling the wall. The guy that was in charge of East Germany at the time, kind of like the Soviet propped up dude, I forgot his actual title. He, the day before, you can look this up online, the day before he said the wall will never go down, the day before the wall. And then in less than 24 hours, Michael Malice talks about this, in his new book, in less than 24 hours, we experienced something that topples the Soviet Union. So you get enough of people that are pissed off about their free will being taken away, and they do an action that is loving, because that was loving to tear the wall down. And then Reagan backed on it, you know, and then Gorbachev kind of backed off, you know, and allowed this to happen, you know, without bringing troops in and all that. And you had Margaret Thatcher, amazing woman, you know, at the time.
The Iron Lady.
But I mean, here's something too, and I keep fucking going off on all these tangents, but I love Margaret Thatcher so much because I like when women are in power and they kick ass. It's just so beautiful to me because you don't like whether you see a Cleopatra, whether you see, you know, it's like this male-dominated penis world.
That's what it is.
You know, white chauvinistic penis world, and then you have these women that come on the scene, like the early 1900s. The governor of Texas was a woman. In Texas, in the early 1900s, and they all called her Ma.
Yeah.
You know, and she was like, doesn't take any shit. Everybody was afraid of her. You know, and we could talk about fear and all that, whatever. But I like whenever you see that feminine energy that is strong, and it's leading, and we need that more. We need that now.
You think about it, like it has to be because there's so much of that male patriarchal, penis, you know, dominated chauvinistic side. And there's a larger statistical amount of numbers of people that are men, which are ruling. Like everything has to find equilibrium. So if there's a very few number of women coming up to lead, they're going to have to be really strong figures because it's a great amount of energy that they come up against to find that equalization, right? Not that it's a fight. It's just that there's a balance that needs to be sought.
Yeah, until we get to we're like aliens where we're all non-binary and we don't have sex genes.
Yeah, like then who cares?
Then
I mean, stop caring right now, honestly.
Yeah, Karen. Yeah,
exactly. Stop caring right now. Yeah, Karen right now.
Don't be a Karen.
I gotta keep the G. So, you know,
Cold War. Sorry, I spun us all around.
It's okay. Directions. It's okay. So, you know, the fact that many of, you know, post Project Blue Book and much of the
Paperclip, MK Ultra,
you know, we had massive advancements in technology, and we had a legitimate nuclear threat. Many people haven't had the opportunity. So if you ever get the chance to visit New Mexico, two places you should go. Okay, one is open all year round, and then the other one's open twice a year for a brief moment.
Walter White's house.
Yeah,
not decent. Go ahead.
You have the Museum of Nuclear History, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah. Right next to a Costco.
You don't have to be a scientist or a nerd to go in there
and love it
and really appreciate what's happening.
Yes.
Okay, that's one place you could go. You go to get the educational context on what is occurring. Now, beyond that, there's another place which is currently sits on an active military base, which is the Trinity Test site, which is where the first nuclear detonation occurred.
You went there last year, right? Or the year before?
I went there last year.
Yeah.
So I really feel that it should be a thing that all humans on Earth go to experience this. So it's open twice a year, and when I went down there, you really don't have a sense. When people are like, oh, nukes, and people joke about it, or I'm gonna nuke my food in the microwave or whatever, or you see it in shows. Like you see this stuff and you see the destruction, but you really don't have a capacity.
Yes, you have to be in it.
Yeah,
yes.
You don't truly have an understanding of just how large and powerful this thing is. So when I got the opportunity to go down to this military base on the Trinity Test site, it was a long drive. You're going out in the middle of nowhere on the side of this mountain range, in about the central eastern part of New Mexico. You're driving, and you get to essentially this series of chain link fences. And you walk about 300 yards, and you come into this very depressed area. And when I say depressed, it's geographically depressed. There is almost like something has carved a bowl out of the earth. Now, when I showed up there where I got to stand, and there's a famous picture of this, where Oppenheimer stood after the bomb, the Trinity Test.
They're making a movie about him right now.
Right. And I'm interested to watch it. But I'm standing on a piece of concrete with a single piece of rebar that's left, which was the framing that actually held the thing where the bomb was dropped on, right, before it exploded on the ground. There's like a little plaque there. In the ground is littered with this thing called trinitite glass. So you got alpha, beta, and gamma particles, which show up during this fission reaction. So it's this chain reaction of explosions that are occurring, literally splitting atoms. It's a very dangerous thing because you're not really sure when they were first blowing this stuff up if this reaction was going to stop. It's a real gas inject system. Now, when the bomb blows up, it's very dark outside when this thing was detonated. Very early morning.
Well, we also have to realize they didn't know if they're going to destroy the Earth or not.
Right.
So Oppenheimer, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita. And the hut that they were in is a slate-plated hut about 3,000 yards away from the actual drop site. In my stance, I would have been like, I got to be further away than this if I was going to be a part of it. But anyway, you stand there. So what happens when this bomb explodes? A fission process occurs where these atoms begin to split, and there's a chain reaction which becomes very violent, and much energy and heat gets dissipated very quickly.
And his fear was, just so people understand this was how crazy this was, his fear was that chain would not stop.
Yeah.
And it would destroy Earth.
And we didn't know.
And we didn't know. And we risked this anyways. Isn't that crazy?
It's stupid. It's really stupid. And so when this bomb explodes in the very early morning, it's dark outside. It's like someone turns a small sun on. Mm-hmm. And it's also very difficult for human beings to understand just how vastly large the sun is. But you do a small sun with great power here on the surface of the Earth. You know how hot it is far away, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine just turning that thing on right on the crust. That's a problem. Now, in the smallest fractions of a second, this thing becomes like upwards of like a mile wide, like in terms of its explosion. And when this occurs, there's so much power that it compresses the Earth. It pushes the crust down like a trampoline. And then the crust springs back up. And when it does so, it pulls all of the sand and everything underneath it up into the mushroom cloud, which becomes superheated. And then it's penetrated with these alpha, beta, and gamma particles, these radioactive particles that hit this, which is essentially this liquefied sand, which turns into glass that's raining from the sky. And it glows. It has a very interesting color to it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
Because I want to inject this. So like in Hiroshima, when that bomb dropped, the buildings, the city, it would disintegrate into just like that sand.
2-step process. Collapse, pulls in and up, and then there's also an explosion that goes out. Okay? So the mushroom cloud pulls things up with its energy up in the upper atmosphere.
Right. And so then just pull that city.
Right? And then there's heat and shockwave that occurs from the greater part of the bomb's explosion on the bottom, outside of the chain reaction itself. And so that rains down. And so in this area where I'm standing, the Earth is carved out in a bowl. All right. That's an immense amount of energy that's required just to do that to the Earth's crust. And then the ground is littered in this radioactive glass. And they have the pictures that show the stages of this bomb's explosion. Now, this was in the 40s. This was the earliest days of fission technology and atomic weapons. We've had well over 2,000 total nuclear tests here on planet Earth across many countries. And that technology has become even more potent and even more dangerous. And during the Cold War, when much of this research was going on, it was a very legitimate threat. It's a legitimate threat for wiping out a vast majority of what is the human population on planet Earth through a conflict that would happen between two countries with vast amounts of scientific technology and a huge amount of armaments.
Yeah, and we don't realize at the time the Russians were dead set on, I mean, I forgot the guy's name that was in charge at that time, and I don't know why it's escaping me because I read about this, but he was dead set on he was there. Like, he was like, the threat is real, this is happening, you know, especially in Cuba, what was happening, like they, you know, like it was for sure going down. Like, I mean, it was like a ticking time bomb. This wasn't a fake propaganda thing. You had drunk, vodka drinking Russians. Yeah. Anybody that he had lined up all his leaders once at some point and asked them if they were against him using nuclear weapons, and a couple of them he shot in front of the other leaders. So, you know, this was because they were, you know, dissenters against this. You know, Hitler had the same thing with, you know, with the Nazi leadership when they started saying, whoa, this is too much.
It becomes too much. And
yeah. So this was super serious, like more than people think.
And we're talking hundreds of nuclear weapons in the arsenal. I stood in the exact epicenter of detonation of one, and it was an early technology. It was a very humbling experience to stand there. And it's very difficult to explain unless you're actually there experiencing it. And I wasn't even there for the explosion. I was there only for the aftermath.
I think this is so important. If there's a lesson, I think this needs to be learned. You experience history, and it's changed you forever to the point of you understanding this. I've had this experience a couple times with going to historical sites, you know, whether it was in Germany or whether here in the United States was really interesting. George Washington's house, if you go there, they have the slave quarters.
Yeah.
And you can go in there, and then they have slaves. You know, they have African Americans that are playing like slaves. They will not break character no matter. And it's interesting when you're there and they're talking and, you know, that time frame, you know, and you're so uncomfortable. Like, I was sweating because you're right there next to, you know, these people pretending to be slaves. And then I'm sitting there thinking, like, how horrific is this? This is horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm thinking, like, George Washington took teeth out of these people to make his own teeth. And, you know, just this thought process of a human being something less than. And then it's like I went up to the guy trying to get him to talk normal because I was so uncomfortable, and he wouldn't break character, which was awesome. It's like, no, there, white dude, you need to, like, feel uncomfortable. Like, and I would have not understood. I go back to that every time when I think of slavery. I go back to that moment, and you can go back to that moment, you know, whether it's Auschwitz or wherever. Those places, we have to stop canceling history and tearing shit down.
Yeah.
We need to make them examples and have school kids go there. And whether it's a statue that we all hate because it's a representation of something, have it there, but have school kids go there and talk about it and have a representation. Tearing shit down does not help. We need to go back to history, see unconsciousness, and feel that unconsciousness.
So we can learn from it.
And allow our higher selves to teach us in that moment of that experience, because that's what happened to you. You realize the power of what? You realize right then and there, the human race could have been gone.
You've made a really good point. When you are there, and just in the aspects of nuclear technology as a weapon, it is truly the most powerful thing that we have. It's not that it's scary. It's more of like, to me, I feel this great sense of disappointment.
Yes.
And it just rattles me to my core. That we even mess around with stuff like that.
Yeah. As humans.
I can't talk about this.
Yeah, not a problem. I think it's also like whenever you look at like for me especially, let's switch. We're going to switch into this. Why the UFOs? Because this was what the episode was about. Why were they coming down because of this powerful technology?
Okay.
Why were they coming down, and why was there so many sightings like over Washington, D.C.? I mean, it's a proven fact. This isn't like craziness. Really good people in the military have had, and during the Cold War especially, saw unidentified flying objects, or UAPs, constantly throughout this. A highly evolved species from a different planet. Why would they come down and check on this?
I've collected myself here for a second. Sorry about that.
Don't apologize.
No, it's okay.
It's a good emotion.
It is
love.
Yeah. So as I was saying, it's a great disappointment that we mess around with things like that, and it's very serious. And I have a great love for human beings in this planet, and I think that these other extraterrestrials that would show up and view this stuff in a time when we're in such polarized conflict, when it's on the brink, there is also a very vast amount of shared love, and they don't want to see.
Yes, 100%.
So much human life and creation go to waste over something that is so dangerous and so trivial and so unneeded.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the conflict or the pressures of the Cold War increased, many of these sightings increased, but because I think there was so much observation and love that wanted to be shared in this sense, and whatever they could do to prevent it. And there were many times they had prevented even tests from occurring up in the state of Wyoming or Montana, wherever we have our missile silos. The technology is dangerous, and it's not worth even putting it into the sense of a conflict. It's of great service to all of creation in this planet, which allows us to survive, to prevent these things from occurring.
Yeah, they need to all be destroyed.
Yeah, it needs to be removed, and I think it is one of the most disappointing errors that we continue to propagate into our existence. That I wish would get learned from, but it won't, because it's like that. It's like you don't want to have it, but the governments will continue to have it because they know it's their trump card.
Yeah, 100%. But I think there's a way around it. I heard somebody say there's only a certain type of uranium that you can use, and that is very limited supply. And if we can keep a supply, if we can understand where the supply of that is,
and
I don't know if you can eradicate it, if we could turn it into nuclear energy or whatever, but if there's a way to track that and spend all the money and the effort in tracking that and make sure.
So we do have that. There are devices. So back, for instance, the Marines would drive around like larger trucks and stuff to look for. There's a signature. There's a signature released by radioactive materials, and we have very big technology.
I know we have satellites that can identify
right.
That, so.
And so now, because of scientists today, physicists, we have small briefcase-sized devices that allow us the ability to track these radioactive signatures from this specific nuclear material which you're talking about. And we actively track the raw material. So rather than tracking the missile that would be made, we're looking for the ability to go around, like in a briefcase-sized thing, and know if there is a dangerous raw nuclear material that's being transported.
So the world would have to get together, disarm themselves completely, and then make it like super war crime.
Yeah.
To even have this, are starting to assemble it together or anything else. And then the world would have to come together, remove that leader, assassinate that leader, even if it comes to that. I hate going against somebody's free will that way, but when it's having to do with humanity, and then make it like everyone would be scared to even touch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd have to be a unifying,
just like scared, but just educated.
Yeah.
In
that makes sense.
The dangers of that sort of power.
Yes.
There's great technology that we've gotten out of the nuclear era.
Oh, 100%.
But a vast majority of the resources of the nuclear era was gone towards weaponizing the technology rather than creating something that was beneficial.
Energy and
I think that the growth in UFO investigations during the Cold War and the onset of these people showing up in highly polarized times of conflict, these extraterrestrials, or even if they're some of their drone ships, whatever it might be, it's really because they have maybe watched for a greater length the outcomes of nuclear technology like this used in a weaponized sense, and they know the aftermath of the effects in a technological sense and even a creational sense much more than we do. Because if we knew, we wouldn't be making it. We wouldn't even be meddling in it.
No one would.
But I think that, and actually I know that if they show up and they go to these sites and they really understand just truly the vastness of the power, it changes a deeper perspective. There's a higher appreciation and recognition of a reverence for life itself that you start to find and learn from it, like feel into it. Like even with I do, it's a tough thing because I care deeply, and it makes you a little disappointed at the end of the day to see this thing continually get perpetuated. And even today we have a nuclear threat that happens not with North Korea, but specifically with Russia.
Yeah, with Russia and Ukraine. It's so interesting to look at the threat, like the whole threat of that situation that's happening now, especially in Russia, is based off of the ultimate trump card that he has. No pun intended.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just Trump.
Yeah, no, it's just the word.
Yeah, is him having nuclear weapons, and that's what we get worried about. This wouldn't be an issue with the Ukrainians and the Russians if it wasn't for that. We would have solved this very simply, but we have to kind of tiptoe. The EU has to tiptoe. NATO has to tiptoe. Because all he's got to do in one rage is start this chain of events off, and then we're all fucked.
And then it doesn't stop.
Or if he just wants to do, like they're saying, like one guy was saying, like he could just bomb Poland, or Kyiv,
And what happens in just so another context?
And if you're losing,
if
he views that he's losing and he's sick, like they said, he's super sick, he views he's losing, he has nothing to lose, he's going to die anyways. If you're a narcissistic, crazy leader,
hope that there is some evolutive rationale in the people that actually have to press the button, which is a paired group.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I would hope that those individuals would be like, that's the wrong thing to do.
Right.
But I have no control over that choice.
I watched a whole thing on this. It's really interesting. So Russia has 100 leaders, about 100 leaders that are in charge, even though Putin's kind of like the mafia king.
Yes.
It's almost like that. There's like, that's why their weapons aren't working now. Because everything's breaking down because there was so much corruption and stealing money in their military industrial complex. But the good news is Russia's run like a mafia, and there's like 100 bosses.
Okay.
The bad news is if China ever got pissed off at us, there's only one dude running everything.
Yeah, there's just one boss.
Those ministers, he just whacks them or gets rid of them or removes them. Xi is running every single thing.
Yeah.
Good news is anytime a leader creates an echo chamber like that, and anybody's afraid to give him any bad news, that goes really quick downward spirals, because you need to have data and information to be able to make decisions
all the time.
So if his information that's coming to him all the time is fearful information that's always positive and propaganda pushed for the CCP, then he's going to turn around and you're going to see China begin. And that's what I think. I think we're going to see China decline. I mean, their fertilizer is – they have – people don't realize this. China's fucked.
Yeah, no, their soil's dying.
Their soil is dying. They have to use 3 times the amount of fertilizer we do. They are having issues getting – they have to get a ton of natural resources. Their population decline, because they implemented that one-child policy.
Yep.
And they've been lying about their numbers. Their population decline is through the roof. They're worse than Japan is.
Wow.
In Japan, as far as the age group for workers, you need we're really good because we got a ton of you millennials.
Yeah.
So we're golden and we have technology. They can't even make the reason they want Taiwan is they can't even make high end chips. United States is the one that can make high end chips.
Well,
and part of Sweden can do a little bit and stuff like that, but. They make the low end stuff that goes in the toasters and stuff like that. They can't. They don't have their act together. And the problem is whenever you have this echo chamber of a leader in this communist party, or whether it's like socialism in the old school Soviet Union, like Putin is.
Sure,
you're gonna have this idea of I have missiles. Fuck you.
Yep.
And that's what they always lean on. Oh, you want to talk shit about us? Well, what about, I have, and I think Russia has, there's reports that some people said they have more than us.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we've done a good job in.
Well, it's severe, and just another piece of scientific context for when these things explode. There's so much force, like I said, it cavitates in the earth. It also starts to rock the internal we have a molten core, and you don't want that core to flip.
No.
And if you preemptively start blowing these things up on the crust and throw us off of our natural precession, which is a wobble, it's going to change our geomagnetic North Pole. Mm-hmm. And when that occurs, that upsets our weather patterns. So it's not just the destruction you get in the short term from nuclear arsenal being detonated, killing people, killing crops, radiation, but it's also throwing the Earth into very violent weather systems for the greater foreseeable future. So we have much longer long-term effects than, beyond just a 70% wipe of human population because people chose to detonate these things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Our fourth density selves, they just have to go to another planet.
Yeah, because
this one's gone.
When you destroy this one,
no more wanderers on Earth.
No, it's like you're stuck drifting around, energetically in the cosmos until you find another place that can energetically align with your state of evolution.
Yeah, in the scheme of the universe, Earth is. We make it narcissistic, but
we do, yeah. And it's just
the Earth could go away, and the human race on Earth could go away, and there's how many more species and
but there's just so much more learning. But you're crippling so much of creation.
Yeah, of course, 100%.
There's so much learning that stops.
Yeah, 100%.
which is really
you take
bad.
Millions and millions of years, and it's just gone.
Yeah,
in this distortion.
It's funny that we created something that's very anti-creational, which is this technology.
But I'm so excited. Next year will be a woolly mammoth.
Oh, they're
releasing
it back?
30,000.
No way.
No, they take an Indian elephant.
Yeah.
So they take this side note. This is so cool. You can look at it on their website, and an elephant takes 24 months. So they have woolly mammoths in pregnant elephants right now.
Really?
Yeah, that will be, and they're releasing them on the Arctic because you want woolly mammoths in the Arctic because it helps hold the carbon down.
Interesting.
Like right now, there's nothing there. So, the permafrost and all that is, like you need trees, and it used to be all grasslands up there, and then just,
So is this like the earliest stages of Jurassic Park?
Yeah, but woolly mammoths will be cool. Bringing back like a saber-toothed tiger, they're bringing back the Tasmanian, the dog tiger, Tasmanian tiger.
Yeah.
They already have that almost done too. Because what they have to do is, so they take the DNA of like a woolly mammoth, they took the DNA, the missing parts,
sure,
they have to find a close relative, and that's the Indian elephant. It's the closest relative. Wow. So they have a majority of the DNA.
Yeah.
So then they take the Indian elephant and put those, but the creature will be a woolly mammoth. It'll look just like a woolly mammoth. And 99.9% of its DNA is a woolly mammoth.
Wow.
Which is a little tiny bit to complete everything,
Yeah.
And I'm doing this in a rudimentary way.
That's
I'm not a biologist or a DNA
So
scientist.
I've seen them at the Smithsonian stuffed, like
but
the
it's
fake
tomorrow.
ones.
It's next year. The first one will be born.
That's bananas.
And we could have 30,000 of these just all over the Arctic, which is awesome. We need it. I'm all for this because I feel like whether we introduce wolves back or whether we're, there's problems with people and all that stuff, of course, because if humans went away, then the earth would flourish. Mm-hmm. But, seeing they're bringing back bison, they're buying land and keep bringing back, whenever you see humans destroy a species, whether we're destroying a whole planet or destroying a country or a city, or we're destroying a whole species of animal, all of it is destructive.
Wow.
And it's also like low third density.
Yeah, it's not. It's very unevolutive.
Almost second density, like a rock.
It's brutal.
At least the rock wasn't go against your free will.
No, the rock's just sitting there.
It's just sitting there. It may fall off and hit you in the head.
But you chose to walk over there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go. Let's be done.
That being said,
squirreling.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.